everybody. Guess what happened? Oh my goodness. I had the timer and obviously it didn't ease in. I had to manually ease this thing in. Good thing I caught on to that. But we are here at Gen X News. I haven't been live for a little bit. Life has been a little bit chaotic, you guys. I have to admit. Update, I quit my job. I'm not going to go into details because I don't want any litigation, crazy stuff, or anything like that. But there's just such crazy stuff in work, and you have to deal with people who have substance issues and problems. And I just was like, I'm done. It's like we are done here. This is not happening anymore. Not happening. So yeah, it was time to go. It was time to change things. So we're starting a brand new page here at Gen X News where I guess I'm going to be looking for new employment, and I don't know. Maybe you'll see me more on here in the past week or so, next week or so, until I find something where you don't have to put up with jackasses, right? Okay. But today we need to focus on a really important topic, a really important historical topic that happened in U.S. history, which is, of course, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. And as you guys all know, they released the files. They declassified and released over like 80,000 pages of documents and files the other week. And my guest, Ryder Lee, who I'm going to put on in a moment, he was going to come on and we were going to talk about why haven't they released the files yet? And then, of course, Murphy's Law. They're like, Donald Trump was like, hey, we're going to release the files. So we had to reorchestrate it. And there was 80,000 files. So I gave it an extra week so we could go through some of it. And today we're going to talk about this. I'm going to bring Ryder in a second because Ryder has done a documentary on JFK called JFK-X, where he goes into different conspiracy theories and evidences. So I'm going to get his take on some of these documents. We're only going to talk about so much. I mean, 80,000 pages, guys. So sorry. We can't go through all of them. You know, we only live for so many years. But yeah, it should be interesting. So let's not listen to me babble all by myself for too much longer. Let's bring Ryder in. Welcome to the show, Ryder.
What's going on, Melissa? Thanks so much for having me on. We get to talk about the first documentary this time. The first time was A Clockwork
We
Shining.
did A Clockwork Shining, which I encourage you guys to go watch that documentary on Amazon. It is really good. My first question, though, to you, why JFK? Why did you want to do a documentary on JFK? What was that about?
Well, me and Jay, we kind of wanted to dismantle the entire conspiracy stuff, and we were like, well, let's tackle JFK because it's essentially the original conspiracy. It's where the term
Right.
conspiracy theory was birthed out of. Now, that's not to say there wasn't other sketchy things that happened before JFK, because obviously there was, one of those being Pearl Harbor, the Titanic, and
Mm-hmm.
other really big events that could be considered strange and weird. But we decided to start with JFK, and then we went Kubrick, and then we were going to do a third one on the Beatles, because we mentioned the Beatles a little bit in A Clockwork Shining, but we kind of just tied in a lot of the music industry stuff into A Clockwork Shining.
Right.
So
Right.
we're not really going to do the Beatles thing anymore. So we kind of just combined both of those. It wasn't
Like,
heavily focused on the Beatles, but it was heavily focused, as you know, because we talked about it before. The
right.
Laurel Canyon scene and the hippie movement and all that, which is really the start of this infiltration by the CIA into the music
Mhm.
industry.
Well, that's interesting because there's also that conspiracy theory that Paul McCartney died and they replaced him. You remember that one?
Yes.
I don't know if I believe that. It was interesting, but I don't know if I believe it.
Well, there is this really interesting photo recently of Paul McCartney I don't know if you've seen it, but where
Mm-mm.
he's walking out of it. Here, let me see if I can find it really quickly. Probably not. But I showed it on the episode I did with Mark Dovlin on my channel on Raised by Giants, but essentially he's walking out of this area and someone's videotaping him coming out, and there's a guy that's right behind him that looks more like him than he looks like him. Like, it's
Wow.
like yeah, it looks like the real Paul McCartney is behind this version of Paul McCartney that we think is actually Paul McCartney. It's so strange, super weird.
That's that sounds so convoluted. I don't know what to think.
As with anything, everything's so convoluted. It's difficult to figure out anything these days.
Well, like we were saying, most people are probably NPCs in this world, and it's frustrating. And what I find frustrating is when you talk about stuff like JFK or anything, people are so easy to control their minds. Like they can literally, you can be like in Canada, have the worst government for 10 years, and then they just switch out the leader and for another leader and then redo the election and everyone wants to vote for the same people again. Their popularity goes up. That's how brainwashed they are. They think that's different. Like people are I'm like, is everyone insane? Like what, like can't people see what they're doing? But nobody can see. And just like nobody can see that the JFK assassination wasn't a lone gunman. Like everybody's been talking about this for years. What was your initial when you saw the files when they came out? What were you expecting?
Well, obviously, like everybody else, I wasn't expecting to see really anything new, and that seems to be the case. There's not really more information in there, but I'm actually really glad that they released them without a lot of them being redacted. There's only like a few things that is actually redacted in there, and then the CIA wanted to redact everything about Israel. It was like a
And
request.
Mossad.
It was like a request by the CIA to redact things about Israel, and they obviously didn't do that, but they took it out of the search. So, but I think that some people have fixed that. I think that John Greenwald Jr. fixed that on the his website, the Black Vault, I think.
Mhm.
But yeah, I didn't really expect because a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's just going to come out and it's all going to be redacted." Well, they did the opposite of that. They just dropped so many files, so many things all at one time that it's like dang near
Overwhelming.
impossible to like go through all of it. And then I've seen people immediately putting it into AI to try and get out any
Grok.
information. Yeah, they put it in the to Grok, and then Grok basically said there's nothing new in there. But I don't know if I trust these AIs. I mean, Grok is pretty
Grok
good, but
Grok is wrong a lot actually. And like, look, Grok's only going to tell you as much as the systems put out there. They're not going to tell you something about that's not in the official narrative. Really.
yeah, I'm trying to find these Paul
Like how
McCartney.
that's my question. Like how do you infiltrate the official narrative if nobody will? If the people who are running all the systems are like, no, this is how World War II went. This is how this assassination went. This is how this went. And like it's like, you know,
Well, it's for people that want this most simplistic answer, and the most mainstream answer to anything is
it's
like
a
what,
template.
yeah, is what AI is going to be used for. You know, instead of having to go on with Google. Do you remember Google like way back in the day when you had to
Yeah.
like go through like 10 to like 11 pages to like actually find stuff? Now
Mhm.
there you can't do that anymore. Now it's just the front
No.
page.
Exactly, there's not
So
that
whatever's
many
on the front page is
results.
all the information that you get.
It's a useless search engine.
Yeah, I guess they took down that video of Paul McCartney because I'm very confident that I saved it on my Facebook, and almost half the things that I've saved on my Facebook, it says it's no longer available, like that it's
Oh.
gone. So I'm guessing that one of these things of Paul McCartney has been taken down because I'm pretty sure that's one of them.
You know what's I found interesting about the documents? Okay, the thing is we might think there's nothing new, but there's a lot of people, if they believe the Warren Commission and I mean, that stuff is all really fishy. And like if they believe the official narrative, there would be some new stuff in there. And here's one of the things that I was just looking at before we came on the show, is apparently in those records there was a bunch of details. I'll see if I can pop it up, about bioagents, anthrax, Lyme disease, and things that might be chemtrails. Like
Well,
like stuff that conspiracy theorists, my husband talks about that stuff, and they're like, "Oh, you're all crazy." And bioweapons, and my husband used to say Lyme disease, they created that, and it's bloody, and it's there apparently. I'm gonna see if I can find that, because I believe I had something on it, but it was so like, just, is this it? No, let's see. I think this is it.
okay, I found the Paul McCartney thing on the video with Mark Devlin.
Yeah, here's this one on tolerance, and then we'll get to that one. It says, "Do you want to know why people are so distrustful of chemtrails? Well, here's the intel community from the JFK files way back then talking about releasing biological and chemical agents that would poison crops, but that looked natural. Ask yourself, is it really impossible that people pushing to bomb Tesla dealerships, start and continue wars around the world, and like this occurred on Epstein Island, would use the same strategy on America?" So yeah, it was in there. There was also another one specifically about Lyme disease and anthrax. And I know they were testing anthrax. The British military were testing it right on their citizens in the underground subway stations in the 50s.
Yeah, isn't Lyme disease is supposedly from what is it, from ticks? Is what
Yeah,
they say
that's what
that
they
it's from,
say.
or is it
That's what
mosquitoes?
it's ticks.
Ticks, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
ticks. Yeah,
Yeah, I got
right.
a girl that had supposedly got Lyme disease from ticks, and like that was right when the time, I forget what the lady's name was, that came out and essentially exposed a lot of that stuff, that it's like engineered, that they're engineering the ticks.
Well, there's a lot of stuff other than the assassination that is in these files. I mean, that we can't, we don't even have the time to get through it. But that was one that really stood out to me, because we're so sick now with autoimmune diseases and inflammation and cancers, heart disease, stuff that it existed, but not in the abundance that it does today, and autism and all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, these guys have been spraying stuff. Why why would they want to poison the crops?
Well, that's really interesting because there's actually, I had Dr. David Morehouse on my channel, and he was involved in this special access program. He's mentioned this several times. It was this top secret special access program, which was to eliminate the active ingredient in the cocoa plant,
Mhm.
to start
Oh,
an intercartel war. Okay,
that
so
is sick.
this was a government special access top secret program that he was involved with, and he was to engineer this chemical that could be sprayed on these cocoa plants in Colombia to take the active ingredient of the cocoa plant out of the cocoa plant. So you would essentially, it would be like people that wanted cocaine or was getting cocaine was essentially just snorting nothing, or like using nothing, because the active ingredient had been taken out. And that was to start an intercartel war. And I think that it had something to do with, well, if you do that, then, where are they going to go for their drugs? They're going to go to you to get their actual drugs from. So then you're going to be making money on top of that. So you're not only taking down two different types of cartels that way, but then you're also ruining their drug that they make money off of. And how are they going to get more of that drug to actually sell to their customers? Well, they're going to have to go through other channels. And then, well, just so happens, government, we got all these illegal drugs, right? We'll sell them to
Yeah,
you. Of course, it's not
because
directly
it's
from the government. It's through back channels of the
of
government.
course, and then they'll put you in jail for it if you're caught with it.
Yep. Yep. That's it.
We live in an insane world, and I feel like I'm in an assailant, and every time I have to leave my house and deal with most of the public, I feel like I'm like you said, like I'm around a bunch of NPCs who are insane, and they think I'm stupid and I'm insane.
All the time. I mean, I told you the story before we started on here of me running into a glass wall, and like 10 people saw me hit the glass wall, and no one laughed, no one chuckled. Well, it was a glass door, not a glass wall. But I smack dab right into the center of a glass door, and 10 people were standing around. Not one of them looked at me. It was a loud noise. I smacked right into it. Not one of them turned around. The guy that was chauffeuring me around, I guess, like acted like he didn't even see me run into the glass door. It wasn't until I asked him, I was like, dude, did you just see me smack my face right into that glass door? And he said, oh, you hit the glass door? I was like, bro, you were looking directly at me when I went into the glass door. These people, it's
Yeah,
insanity.
well,
Like that's why I
one
don't
of
like. Go ahead.
yeah, no, there it is. I had the same experience at work at almost every job I've had, where I'm like, these people are treating me like I'm stupid, and they're totally retarded. They just keep doing the same thing, and they are so manipulated and brainwashed. Like they're programmed right away. But one of your audience members was talking about how when their mother was bit by a tick and got with Lyme disease, they became allergic to milk, dairy products, and red meat. And I had heard that one of the goals now was to make majority of people allergic to meat with these vaccinations and stuff. So that's interesting. Lyme disease, it's like a development of things.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that too much. I've kind of tried to stay away from the medical side of this nonsense because it just
No worries.
is too much, and it gets you taken down really
Oh, I
easily.
sorry about
Here's
that. I
here's
understand.
this the Paul McCartney thing.
Here, let's pop that up. There we
Okay,
go.
so this is on my channel, so it's not going to be. I'm not going to play the music, but here he is. I get ready to play it here. So he's going to be walking out, and then you're going to look at the guy that's behind him. So there's Paul McCartney right there. And
Mm-hmm.
here in just a second, there's going to be a guy that's like right behind him that looks more like him than he right there. You see him?
Is that John Lennon?
It looks like him.
Oh,
It's
weird.
crazy.
That's weird. Who is they? Do you know who that is? Has anyone identified that person?
Yeah. Yeah. They're saying that. I mean, in this, they're saying that is uh, obviously looks like John Lennon, but I thought it looked like Paul McCartney because of the whole thing that people have said that Paul McCartney was, he faked his death and all that, or that he died and then they replaced him. That was my initial reaction, but I'm pretty sure that's what Mark Devlin says in here too.
Put in there. You can't trust a picture that you find online anymore because it could have been photoshopped because the fakery is now very good. So it's very difficult to be able to place any stock in any of this stuff. Really, you've got to go back to print photographs, which are much more difficult to fake, and old magazines and old books that have been around for decades if you want any reliable evidence.
Anyway, if people would like to check that out, it's on my YouTube channel. But yeah, that seems to be a very common thing. And there's that guy on that's really popular on TikTok right now that's talking about how everyone is playing other people, that they're all essentially like other actors are playing like other actors and stuff. But yeah, this we talked a little bit about the JFK stuff before we got on we were messaging back and forth. And the most interesting thing about the JFK assassination, which is all in my documentary JFK-X, and what really no one talks about is the fact that JD Tippit Okay, hold on. Let me actually have some things to pull up here. Okay, so this is JD Tippit
Okay,
right
I
here,
will.
and he is
I'm looking here.
essentially a spitting image of JFK. And he looks so
Wow,
much like JFK that his nickname on the Dallas Police Force
was
was
JFK.
JFK. Okay, that's a side by side of JD Tippit and JFK there. Okay, now Oswald was accused of killing JD Tippit. Oswald was never arrested for the assassination of JFK. So,
Right, he seemed kind of shocked when people said that when he was doing his perp walk.
yeah, so he was arrested for the apparent assassination of this gentleman right here, JD Tippit, which was a Dallas police officer. And whenever he was
Mhm.
questioned if he was the one that shot the president, he acted like he didn't even know that the president had been shot or assassinated. Okay, so then it's just a coincidence that JD Tippit right here was shot in the exact same places that JFK was shot. Okay, here is
Mhm.
the diagram of the autopsy of JD Tippit. Okay, right here in the face, this quarter pound panel of the face is where we see JFK get shot in the Zapruder film. He also has one that's protruding out of his back here, which is another thing that is shown in the autopsy photos of JFK. You see an autopsy photo to the shot of the back of the head of JFK and in his back. And this is exactly like what it would look like if it was JD Tippit's body. It's the exact same wounds in the exact same area. Okay,
That's bizarre.
and he looks like JFK, and his nickname was JFK. Okay, so this is like a ritualistic aspect. So they essentially had to kill somebody for real this day, but it wasn't JFK. Okay, it was this guy that looks like JFK. I mean, even the most astute JFK researchers
Mhm.
will tell you that they switched out JFK's body.
Really? Like, right, because they wouldn't let them perform the autopsy in Texas,
Right. And that
even
was
though they
all
had mandate over it, authority.
Jackie's idea. Jackie was the one that was getting them to try and not let his body be autopsied in Dallas, even though the coroner had the right to do the autopsy there. She was
Right.
pushing them to get him on Air Force One and uh, get him back to Bethesda. And that's essentially what happened. The autopsy was not performed there. I mean,
We have someone asking about the ears. Do the ears match for JD Tippit's in from that autopsy photo? They have the one of JFK dead autopsy photo. They're saying that the JFK ears don't match, but do JD Tippett's ears match?
there isn't any photos of the JD Tippit autopsy. We don't have any photos, and
No,
we don't have
I
any
think
photos of the.
what they mean is there's a photo of a dead JFK. Do the ears on that dead JFK, do they match JD Tippett's
That's something that
ears when he's alive?
I don't want to show the JFK autopsy photos because
No, that's fine.
that'll be a nightmare. And I
Mhm.
don't want to show the Zapruder film either because that's another one that uh, gets
Okay, I
taken.
was gonna share it, so I won't share it then.
Yeah, they'll immediately it'll just be gone.
Copyright it.
Yeah, but so and this has been brought up several times. Like people have caught on to this, and people that it was even brought up as recently as the on the Joe Rogan um podcast with Ian Carroll. Ian Carroll literally hit on the documentary without naming the documentary. It was so
Right.
wild. Hold on, let me see if I can actually. I think I got this clip here somewhere.
Well, how do you feel about people? I mean, like this one I have basically is saying there's links to Mossad, links to Israel, Khazari Mafia, which I was going to do a show on, which I'm still going to do a show on, but I had to put it off because of all the kerfluffles that's been happening. Some people say it doesn't say that. Some people say it does say that in the documents. I think there's Israel and Mossad enough time that should make you go, at least.
Okay, so here is the Joe Rogan clip with Ian Carroll here. This was wild when I was watching it. So they start talking about Epstein here in the beginning. So they start out by talking about Epstein.
There's no volume.
There's no volume. It's playing on my end.
Yeah, there's no volume. Is it? Do you have it on a browser? Because if you don't have it on a browser, if you just have it on a desktop, the volume won't come through on this system. It only does browser only.
Oh no!
It's a pain in the butt.
Oh no!
You could upload it into the system, but it tends to like the browser. Unfortunately, it's like that with video. It'll just play it without any volume. So sadly.
Oh man, that sucks because this is a really key piece because Ian Carroll literally says that the JFK's body isn't JFK's body.
I'm gonna see. Let me see if I can find Ian Carroll saying that on his Twitter. He may have posted this, but yeah. So I was just while I'm doing this, I was talking about how Mossad and Israel's mentioned so many times. I mean, a lot of people are denying, saying it doesn't say Israel, that we're all just a bunch of anti-you-know-whats. But I don't know. Do you think it's concerning that they want it to redact Israel out and it says it so many times? Don't you think that's a red flag?
Yeah, I do, but that's what people have been talking about for a really long time. That Israel had a lot to do with it, and that JFK was trying to essentially defund Israel, and that's why they were kind of got rid of him, apparently. But then when people get that type of evidence again, then they're like, "Oh, okay, that this is essentially proof," because it is all over the documents. Israel is mentioned several times. I have all the screenshots from it. Let me try and find where this is in the Joe, what the timestamp is.
So he doesn't think it's okay. No. I'm looking at the clips. They're talking about the dancing Israelis.
Yeah, I don't think that they have it in the clips.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Oh, I was watching it on Spotify. That's why I can't find the.
Well, it's interesting that he's saying that. My question about what's the purpose of having, like you said, a ritual thing? Who's the ritual for? What's the ritual about?
Okay, here it is. I found it.
Okay, good.
All right, let's get rid of that. And I'll bring this back up. Okay, this is from the Joe Rogan Experience, straight from YouTube, straight from Uniboob.
So if he ever fucking hid some shit in there, no one knows where it is.
Yep.
They're gonna raise that building.
Dead. I assume he's dead.
Volume.
But there was so much.
Can you hear it now?
Yeah, we can hear it. It's just a little staticky.
It's too loud.
I don't know. It's just got this static, like a bad connection.
Okay, well, it's not very long.
Shit around it. That I don't feel 100% sure. I feel 95% sure that he's dead, 98% sure that he's dead.
Right, I wouldn't go 100 either.
Yeah, right. You know what I'm saying? It's there's very few things I feel 100% sure about.
But they did do an autopsy. You'd have to.
But they did an autopsy on JFK too, and it was not his body.
There you go.
Does he say how does he figure that it's not his body? Is it the similar?
Well,
to
that's
what you're
been
thinking?
the whole. That's what people have been saying for a really long time. That they switched out JFK's body with JD Tippit's body, and some people think that it happened. Well, our movie, Jay Widener believes that it happened inside of the limousine. So the limousine had this trap door, back door to
Right.
the limousine, and then they switched out JFK's body with JD Tippett's body, and that's the body that they have
Right.
at the coroner.
And
And other
he
people
me
think that was switched out on Air Force One.
he
But
was
either way, it
I
was switched
remember
out.
yeah, I remember that, Jay mentioned something about a squib, like an explosive device that they use in movies to create the illusion that JFK was shot. But that sounds really elaborate.
It is super elaborate, but here is another thing. If people think this is wild and crazy, like, yeah, it might be, but here is a freaking Vanity Fair article right here that talks about how JFK um, staged his own murder in a James Bond inspired spy film 2 months before his assassination. Okay.
What?
Yeah. There you go. Bombshell.
Wow.
Boom.
And why okay, so you said before, you caught me on something because you said there had to be a death or a ritual. Is this beyond politics? Because we always think they got JFK because he was interfering with the mafia. He was interfering with Israel. He was interfering with the deep state. He didn't like the CIA. But is there something more? Because you said ritual.
Well, it was a ritualistic aspect because if you read through this Vanity Fair article, it lays everything out. So he essentially Jackie wanted to be a filmmaker, and she decided to film this home movie of JFK faking his death, which had all of the same Secret Service agents that was a part of that November 22nd, 1963 event in Dealey Plaza. Okay, and then it all the same people were involved. Paul Landis was involved. I mean, Paul Landis is down here in this article literally talking about it whenever Jackie called him on the phone and said to pull up to the house and act like that you had got a call that the president had been assassinated. Okay, so this to me seems like a dry run. Okay, so they they did this to see if they could actually get away with the real thing. And you have to do that publicly. And in order to get away with it, you have to do something that is actually real. It gets into like karmic repercussions, right? If you do something that is 100% staged and 100% fake, you can get some sort of karmic backlash from that. So therefore, they had to murder JD Tippit, the police officer that looks identical to JFK, in order to make it the most believable and to have a body in place of JFK's body.
What would be the ultimate purpose of like him doing this? Like he's the president of the United States. How could he get away with this and not be seen and just disappear?
Well, Jackie married a
Aristotle Onassis.
Aristotle Onassis, okay, and then they went to his island, and
Mhm.
was essentially like there was tabloids and people that would make like tabloid newspapers and say that they spotted JFK on Onassis's island.
Oh my god, actually, yeah, it's like an Elvis sighting, but it's a JFK sighting.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and this article literally lays all of it out, and it seems like a huge dry run. And people, whenever they watched our documentary of like the hardcore researchers and the hardcore people that were like, "Oh, there's no way, this is a bunch of bull," and then when this article dropped, when does it say that it came out? November
2024.
19th, 2024. Okay.
So,
So
but here's the thing, like, he was gonna scatter the CIA to the wind, he was gonna do all these things, but his assassination stopped all that and allowed these people to go ahead with their plans.
because I think that they realized that they were way in over their head, right? Because RFK, his brother,
Okay.
really wanted to, he was really trying to take down the mob. I mean, he was
The mob.
prosecuting the mob, he was going after them. He was, I mean, we show it in our documentary. It's a very little known thing, but we actually have him talking about it where he's like,
Yeah.
this is a governmental organized crime operation that's going on here.
It's still there too.
And they seen the way that the country was heading and they were trying to stop it, but then they realized that how deeply ingrained all this stuff is into the government. They're like, well, there's nothing that we can do about this. And then, JFK has been on record, talking about Abraham Lincoln's legacy as well. Talking about, would
Mhm.
Abraham Lincoln be remembered as such a great president if he wasn't assassinated?
Right.
And
But
most people fondly remember JFK. I mean, JFK is looked at as
yeah,
one of the
he had
best
very
presidents of the United States.
yeah. He had one of the highest, approval ratings, like, well over 70% as well at the
And the
time.
women loved him. Is the most
Oh,
attractive
yes, they did.
most attractive president that we've ever had, and we've never had another
And
attractive president.
He's the only Catholic president we've ever had, too.
I mean, I guess you could
That's
argue Bill
interesting.
Clinton maybe was sort of in his heyday attractive, but not as good looking as Mr. JFK.
No. No, for sure not. So then was his brother's assassination staged as well? Because I actually showed a film in, one of my episodes of how they cornered him, and the guys that were involved were probably Mossad, and I went through how it was really suspicious, and they actually pinned him and cornered him, and that guy came in, and the Sirhan came in and shot him, who's probably a MK Ultra agent or whatever like that, but it was his death plans? Like,
Well, when you look at like Oswald, right? When Jack Ruby came up and shot Oswald right in the stomach,
mhm,
whenever they were
mhm,
walking from the jails, there was no pictures of the autopsy of Oswald.
right.
He was wearing a black vest, a black sweater, so you couldn't see any blood. And who dies from a freaking gunshot wound to the stomach? Like he,
Nobody? D
yeah, like especially whenever you're right around police and EMS and ambulances, and that you're at a police station that you can
I
get.
suppose they could let you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess they could let you, but I mean, the the dude was shot point blank in the stomach. That's not great. That's probably, there's going to be an exit wound too, so it probably went through him if he was
Right.
really shot. But with RFK, Noguchi, the coroner, said that RFK was shot point blank in the back of the head. Now, who and
Wasn't he shot from out front in the film? Like, or was he shot by
no, RFK. I'm talking
in the
about
back?
RFK. He wasn't shot in the front.
He wasn't. He was shot in the back by Sirhan Sen. Okay.
Yeah. So that has led speculation and theories as to who it was that actually shot RFK, and that it wasn't Sirhan Sirhan and Walter Bosley in our film,
Mhm.
which is an AFOSI, Air Force Office of Special Investigations, which worked at a place in California that kept all the archived details of all this stuff, and the Sirhan ballistic evidence was not in the archives anymore. Just like JFK's evidence was stolen from the National Archives.
That's interesting. Like you mean like the blood matter, brain matter?
Brain matter, blood matter, and then also the limousine that was rolling through Dealey Plaza at that time is not the same limousine that is pictured after. So whenever we were making JFK-X, me and Jay Widener, he had ordered the Life magazines, the original Life
Right.
magazine of,
'Cause they had the Zapruder film that they didn't release.
right, it had the frames, the picture frames in the Life magazine, the original one that was released after the assassination. They had just the still frames, but the video hadn't been released yet. And all of the photos of the limousine that they like pictured was not the same limousine. The limousine that's in the Zapruder film is a 6-person modified limousine. So it has the 2 Secret Service agents in the front, John Connolly and his wife directly behind them, and then Jackie and JFK in the very back. Now, the ones on Life magazine, in the magazine that Jay Widener bought while we were making the movie, it was delivered to his house as we were making JFK-X. And looking through the limousine, it's a 4-person limousine. It's not even the same one.
The one that's in the Time magazine stills is a 4-person?
Yes. The
So
magazine that he had that I looked through, I don't have it with me because Jay's got it. But we were looking through it because we wanted to, because he ordered it because we were making the movie. And when I was looking through it, I was like, the limousine isn't the same limousine. It's a different limousine that they're picturing here.
So those stills are obviously not the actual from the assassination. That's actually like almost like a staged scene. I don't know what to say about that. That's bizarre.
It's super bizarre.
That is bizarre. I'm just looking at images or whatnot now of the they're calling it 26 seconds, but there's also a really weird phone call that happens between after JFK's death, maybe 10 days later. I think this is in your documentary, between Lyndon B. Johnson and Jackie, and they almost sound like they're flirting with each other.
Yeah, come over, Jackie. This is the first time that they've spoke to each other after the supposed assassination of JFK. And LBJ is like, if you're ever around, Jackie, then come on over. I'll show you around. This is what men are supposed to do. Blah blah blah. Acting like super creepy towards her. Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of the documentary.
What?
Because there's a photo that we have in there of like LBJ that's opening up the shower curtain. And he's just peeking his head out that we show.
He's kind of weird. I never really knew too much, but once I heard his voice, I was like, yeah, he has this little. I mean, I know people from the South in those days. They are different, so they're more like jovial. Like they'll be like, "Come on, sweetheart," and it might be different from how I would behave, but there's something still about Lyndon B. Johnson, LBJ, that's a little odd, even because he's got that accent. It's a lot different than what I'm used to, being way north, than up in Canada. But he sounds like, I don't know, he's not just asking them to come for sweet tea or something, you know?
Yeah, and then with Connolly at he's interviewed just a few days afterwards, and he's in the hospital. And Connolly is essentially recounting his version of the events, and it doesn't make any sense. He's saying that he looked back and there was blood all over the trunk of the limousine. There's not any blood. There's zero
Right.
blood in the entire film, in the entire Zapruder film. No
Right.
blood.
And I mean, and they also say that some of this stuff reminds me of what happened with the Trump assassination. Like it's like everything's clear. They move all the agents out of the way. Like there's not that many. They're not as close to the whole car or something like that. It just seems like there's a lot of interesting coincidences that would have had to be actually set up. Like one of the things about the Trump assassination that happened, a lot of people said it was fake. I don't know, maybe it was. That's possibly. But it was interesting that CNN never covers a single Trump rally, but they covered one. Which one was that? The one where the assassination attempt was. That's That's a little bit of a red flag for me. And there's some similarities with how everything is orchestrated and it seems purposeful. It doesn't seem like it's not like you would think there would be a standard procedure and they would stick with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that immediately it was like the conspiracy theory for the left. So weird.
Yeah.
I was
I heard
like, I
that.
thought you guys didn't like conspiracy theories.
They have just as many. They have tons of conspiracy theories. They have a conspiracy that you can change your gender.
And that was so strange to me, and I would hate to see what our reality would be like right now if Trump would have been assassinated for real.
Scary.
Mm-mm.
Definitely a scary scenario.
We would be living in a radically different world.
We are in
I personally think, right?
oh yeah. We switched some pretty nasty timelines.
I think so. I mean, and that's the only explanation, and we did something. Like something happened. Now maybe this is just like a reprieve. You know what I mean? And it could be like a huge setup. I mean, I'm not opposed to the possibility that it's just a setup for everyone to go super far right and install some things that wouldn't have been gotten away with if it was the other way around. But it's this two-party type of system that no one is ever going to agree. Like it's never going to be unanimous on anything because we have the Democrats and we have the Republicans. And then whenever a Democrat gets in power, they're able to go around and undo everything that was just done by the previous administration. I mean, we've seen that in 2020 when Biden just went in and wrecked everything that Trump had done since 2016, right?
Yeah.
And then Trump's coming back in and then trying to reverse some of that stuff. But then what happens when this 4 years is up, right? Like what's it going to be then? Is it going to be?
It's because there's such a divide between the two parties. It's very unstable.
It is, and it's like, okay, well, if somebody else gets in the next election, then it's going to be the complete opposite of that again. So it's like, it's really a broken system. I think that the whole thing is broken. What document do you have pulled up here?
I'm just showing these documents basically that where they're circling Israel. It's basically JFK called Joe Biden. Oh yeah, JFK Jr. called Joe Biden a traitor in the documents as well.
Yes, that was super interesting.
Wasn't that interesting? But they're just showing how CIA, like here's all the Israel in that one. Where's the next one? Israel Intelligence Services. CIA has no objection to declassification. This document. Months regarding the travel of U.S. citizens to Russia via Israel. Interesting. It's very, and there's just so much here. And
yeah,
apparently,
that was part of the plan to dump so many of them that it's freaking
too
take
much.
forever to read through
That
them.
is literally Trump's tactics. Have you noticed the news cycles are crazy? They can't even keep up because that's Trump's tactic. It really is.
To throw a bunch of stuff in there that he doesn't really necessarily actually want to do. It's just for the media.
Yeah, well, apparently a few months before his death, JFK had been probing Russia, trying to find rogue CIA agents. I found that really interesting. There was something on that in the documents.
Well, then you also have the UFO type of connections that others have brought into the conversation for a long time. And he did in this document, here it is the memorandum for the director of a Central Intelligence Agency, where JFK essentially wants to reclassify some of the UFO files from the CIA, but that's a request. He's requesting that. That's not a executive order. That's not anything other than just a request. So a request is different than like ordering somebody to do something, right? And the whole UFO connection gets really muddied up in this whole phenomenon, and they think that it has to do with UFOs, but it doesn't. It's a missile satellite detection system that JFK was wanting to share with Russia. Okay, and then that gets
Right.
misconstrued as that it was advanced UFO back engineer technology that it had to do with, but it didn't. It had to do with, it was satellite systems, advanced satellite systems that he was wanting to share with Russia. And then people have taken that to be advanced UFO type craft, but it's not. I mean, that's all documented in the AR Borden documents and the, what's the other gentleman that was a part of AR Borden?
The letter I have up there, this is the actual letter where it states that JFK, it says specimen personally delivered by special agent redacted on September 8th, 1994. Envelope postmark Worcester, Massachusetts, bearing the hand-printed address Senator Joseph Biden, U.S. Capitol Building, Washington, D.C., accompanying a handwritten, hand-printed letter dated 8/26/94, beginning, Dear Senator Biden, you are a traitor, and it bears the signature John F. Kennedy, Jr.
JFK Jr. knew that Biden was a traitor all the way back in the 90s.
And then he died, and then Hillary
Shortly
became
after, yeah.
governor. And Hillary won the election, and I don't think she would have won it if JFK Jr. had lived and stayed in the running. And of course, RFK, he was going to run.
Well, he was already running. He was going to
Yeah.
beat
Mhm.
LBJ and become president.
You think LBJ had him off too?
I don't know. There's evidence to
no.
point toward that it was the new security guard that RFK had just hired that was responsible for putting the bullet in the back of the head of RFK.
So you think like RFK was definitely assassinated? There was no fake.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident in saying that he was definitely assassinated. Now, JFK Jr., that one's up in the air. Nobody really knows about that one.
Right, because him and his wife, that they had that plane crash off of Martha's Vineyard. I believe it was.
Yeah.
I remember that in the news.
But if you believe the Q conspiracies, Melissa, he's
alive.
He's alive and well.
Well, everyone used to say there's like a Kennedy curse, but it's obviously just not, I don't know, not necessarily curse, just that when you get close to power, there's evil, corrupt people.
Yeah, and you have to essentially play ball with these people. Like, you can't just go trying to storm the castle on them. And that's what Trump was subtly attempting to do. I mean, whenever he was on Joe Rogan and he was talking about how he himself, well, not himself, but he flew to Iraq to meet with the general there to ask them how long it was going to take to take out ISIS. And they said a couple of weeks. When the people in the United States were telling him that it was going to take 10 years. Okay?
Well,
he didn't listen to them, and he was like, okay, well, I'm going to fly to Iraq and figure this out for myself. And he did. But presidents since JFK really haven't done that. They don't care to find out for themselves because they're essentially scared, right? They're like,
well,
okay,
they're puppets.
Yeah, I'm just going to do whatever they tell me to do. I'm going to be the
There's
face of the
yeah.
United States for 4 to 8 years, and then I'm just going to get out
Yeah.
there and do what I'm supposed to do.
They know they're not calling the shots. They know that the bureaucrats and the deep states are calling the shots. And like when Tucker went to talk to Putin in Russia and he said, "Do you talk to Joe Biden?" And Putin laughed. Putin doesn't talk to Joe Biden, he talks to the CIA. But in this case, he talking to Trump.
Exactly.
You know
And
what I
that's what
mean?
Putin was talking to Tucker Carlson about as well. He was like, listen, when Obama came to visit and talk with me, he would tell me one thing, his people would tell me something completely different. When Biden would talk, he would tell me one thing, his people would tell me something completely different. Right?
These are and I'm not saying that Putin's perfect, everyone, but you got to see how frustrating that can be to deal with this two-faced psychopathic country who the leader says one thing, but apparently he's not the leader. And so I guess it's a good tactic because you never know what the hell's going to go on, but it also makes you wise to think never trust an American politician.
Yeah, and at least Trump went in there and acted like the presidency had power because he believed that it did. And that's what
Right.
they didn't like about it
Yeah.
because he wasn't their guy.
So, do you think that Jackie or any of them were possibly involved in anything occultish if they had to have a sacrifice, as the theory goes? Do you
Well,
think they believe in something beyond?
that's my personal theory. That's not a part of JFK-X. It just makes sense with
Mhm.
the style of exactly what's going on. Like you have to make something real about a scenario. Like something has to happen in order for it to happen,
Mhm.
right? And just like with the Boston bombings, right? The Boston bombings was a diversion from really what was going on. There was a third bomb that blew up next to the JFK library in the archives department that nobody knows
Hmm.
about, nobody talks about. Okay,
Interesting.
okay,
I didn't even know about it. There you go.
so there's these. So when something happens, it has to be real to a degree, and in order to do that type of ritualistic magic, something has to happen, and that's my personal theory. It's not that doesn't reflect
Anybody
our
else?
movie JFK-X, but it's just the way that I see it. Doing all the research and all the stuff that I've done, is that it seemed like it had to go down that way because it's essentially a magic sort of ritualistic aspect, and in order for it to go off without a hitch, they had to do something real, and that meant that they had to kill somebody that looked almost identical to JFK, that was nicknamed JFK, and that was
Mhm.
Officer JD Tippit.
It's very symbolic.
Super symbolic. And you guys can
It's
watch JFK-X for free. It's up on Amazon.
on
You can watch it for
Tubi,
free.
on
Watch
Amazon
it
and
for
Tubi.
yeah, you can watch it for free on Tubi as well.
So, wouldn't that be weird? Don't you think that would be weird? I don't know. I heard that everyone calls JFK a philanderer, but I heard that Jackie had her affairs too. But wouldn't that be weird? She's married to Aristotle Onassis and a different guy, and she's got her husband on the ship. She's there with her two husbands. That sounds like something a liberal would do.
Well, they were Democrats. They were all Democrats. The whole Kennedy family. RFK Jr. is the first one to flip Republican.
Yeah.
That's what another thing that people don't really, because the right looks at JFK as like one of the best president, and it kind of gets lumped into this Republican type of president, but he wasn't. He was hated by the Republicans.
Well, yeah,
Republicans did not like him.
he had to go have a lot of meetings with Southern type of people who didn't necessarily want to give up the way life was and do the civil rights stuff.
Yep, he wanted to end segregation. He wanted to end like all this stuff, and like
And now the Democrats want to bring it back. They're like, we don't want you in our safe spaces. Get out, you whitey white asses. I'm like, okay. Have it your way. It's weird, but what I find weird is I think that was JFK, because I think Lyndon B. Johnson apparently was an extreme race. You know what I mean? He was extremely not a great guy, but they ended up putting all the Democratic, like all the African Americans in basically hoods and bad neighborhoods and getting them on welfare and convincing them to basically become single parent households. They had such a strong business community, low divorce rates. They were a really tight community. And then after all this and other Democrats come to power, you see like this 75% divorce rate and ghetto and then gangster rap, and it just went downhill for them. And from what I understand from my research, a lot of that's planned by the CIA. A lot of this music's introduced into the culture on purpose.
music and drugs, and then the music glorifying the drugs and the crime. Right?
And it still does.
I mean, that's the destruction of the nuclear family. And then, crack hit the black community hard, and then heroin hit the white community hard. Right?
It's so insane. So it's like JFK really probably was the only good Democrat. Only decent politician, really. I mean, I don't know if any of them been good. Not even, well, definitely not Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, he definitely seen the way that the country was headed, and he wanted to stop it, realized that he couldn't stop it, and he had to go with plan B. And then unfortunately, RFK tried, and he didn't make it either. And JFK Jr. tried. He didn't make it either. So it's like this.
Maybe that's why RFK Jr. was like, hey, maybe I better switch this up a little. Maybe I'll just be health minister. Yo.
Yeah. Which I really like. I really like JFK Jr. I followed him ever since he started to started his campaign to run for president.
So, is there any theories like how if JFK did fake his death along with Jackie, how he ended his life out? Because Jackie lived in New York. Aristotle Onassis eventually died. She, kind of lived almost like a bachelor in New York City. Is there any idea of or spottings or anyone reporting on how he ended his life?
Okay, so JFK's body was exhumed from his initial burial site in Arlington National Cemetery, and then he was reburied in a new location that wasn't very far from where he was originally buried. Now, they did this in the dead of night. They didn't tell anybody that they were doing this. It was like a really big secret. So they exhumed his body in 67 and then reburied him. So that would...
Did they give a reason why?
No reason was given that that they needed to, and the only reason that the conclusion that I'm coming to is that's when JFK's real body went into the grave.
Oh, so you think he did die, but later?
Well, yeah, of course. He would be like, what, freaking 90-some years old now? He's definitely dead. For sure. There's no way
But
he's
it
alive.
wasn't. But if they did that in 67, they were just, prepping for when he would die?
Yeah, he had an autoimmune disorder. You didn't know about his... he had severe pain all over his body.
I didn't know that.
Yes, he was he was sometimes depicted with a back brace. He was depicted with wearing crutches. he had a really severe autoimmune disorder that was essentially like killing him. He was in pain like 24/7. I forget what the name of the autoimmune disorder is.
It is.
Hold on, I might be able to find Addison's disease.
Addison's disease.
John F. Kennedy suffered from Addison's disease, an autoimmune disorder affecting the adrenal glands, and he also had another autoimmune condition. His medical history is now understood to be constant with autoimmune syndrome type 2. So,
Wow.
Addison's disease, this is a condition where the adrenal glands, which produce vital hormones, are damaged or destroyed, leading to insufficient production of cholesterol and other hormones.
Well, my husband was just saying that Addison's disease.
Yep.
Interesting. So I'm assuming that they didn't have, well, I don't know if they have cure for it, but most of the time, a lot of this stuff, like for me, I had a lot of families with autoimmune diseases, and I find that if I don't eat wheat and sugar and crappy foods and don't get vaccinations and stuff, it's better for me. So I don't know what's going on and how Addison's disease comes about. But do you think he lived a long life, or do you think they actually moved the body and buried him right at that time? He didn't live much longer after.
I don't think he lived much longer after, because it makes sense that whenever they dug up the body without letting anybody know, that's whenever they put his body in. So he died in 63, 64, 65, 67. So, that 4 years later.
Wow. That's not long.
No, but if you look at the way that he wanted to go out and the way that he would reference Abraham Lincoln, it makes sense that if he knew that he was going to die,
Go out with bang.
yeah, what's the most fashionable way to go out? Like, someone explained this to me. I think that it was Lynn Buchanan on my show. He was like, would you rather have had Osama bin Laden die in a cave somewhere from a heart attack?
Okay,
Or
because
would you
here's the
rather
thing,
have SEAL Team 6 go in and eliminate Osama bin Laden so we can go America? Hell yeah.
Right. There's only one little issue. Like if he died in 67, he could not have been spotted on Aristotle Onassis ship, because Jackie didn't marry Onassis until 1968.
Yeah, those were just rumors. That was just rumors of that.
Right.
That's just tabloid magazine rumors. I mean, we don't really have too many of those anymore in the United States, but back in the day, like there used to be like tabloid
Right.
newspapers all over the place with crazy, ridiculous stuff. And I mean,
National Enquirer.
Japan still has all of them with like weird alien stuff. My friend Ryan Gable sent me some photos of like tabloid alien magazines where like humans are like having sex with aliens and stuff, like weird stuff, like all the time. So that's just like a rumor and a tabloid mill.
Okay. That's it. Because I was just like, I mean, maybe they knew each other before, but it makes sense though. If he really died in 67, then she was able to move on and get married mentally. You know what I mean? Like she's like, oh, my husband's gone now. I need some I want some money. I don't know. Gross. I wouldn't have wanted to marry Onassis. He seemed like a jerk to me.
Yeah, and that's just my personal opinion. That makes sense to me that he was suffering really bad. He had this autoimmune disorder. He was in a lot of pain. The easiest way for him to get out of it was to essentially fake his death, just like Jackie Kennedy had filmed the fake assassination with a whole movie 2 months before the supposed real assassination that I just showed earlier in the Vanity Fair article. And then his body
Right.
was exhumed from at Arlington National Cemetery, and then his real body was placed inside of the grave.
That is so fascinating. I just find this thing where he staged his own murder in a James Bond inspired spy film really I don't know, interesting, but also very creepy. Now, did you catch any? I know there's so many documents and it's hard to catch a lot, but was there anything else that piqued your interest that were in those files that, not a lot of people are talking about right now that you thought, that's really interesting. This ties into a lot of theories I have.
Yeah, the one that you already brought up, which was the chemtrail stuff, very interesting things. The Israel stuff, very interesting stuff. The Biden stuff, JFK Jr. Basically calling Biden a traitor. The UFO stuff, also interesting, but doesn't really confirm a lot because it was just a request. It wasn't an executive order. He wasn't forcing anyone to reclassify any kind of UFO file. And I think that in there is just a coincidence that it happened shortly before his supposed assassination. I don't think that it's related in any kind of way, but could be wrong. Who knows? What else did I miss?
I was apparently Ben Shapiro of the Daily Wire. His response was really kind of interesting because, of course, he doesn't like that people are doing the tie to Israel. And he's basically saying, so what? Why does it matter if we know who killed JFK? So what? It was 60 years ago. And everybody's bugging him going, so what? The Holocaust was 80 years ago. Like, I just found his approach to such an important historical event in American history. Like, so what? Do we really need to know? Like, he literally wrote an article on it. I find that very what's the word?
Suspect.
Suspicious. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty suspect.
He's kind of douchey. I don't like him. I used to listen to the Daily Wire, but there was just something that I was like, this feels a little fake.
Yeah, when they essentially trashed Candace Owens from the Daily Wire, I was like, maybe not.
I just find it interesting that they weigh in this way. If you like, it's like maybe you should just be quiet because now you're just kind of being insulting. You're literally insulting a Democratic president, not even a Republican president. Come on now. Everybody should want to know the truth behind his death. And obviously there is the magic bullet theory and all that stuff, and that it was a lone gunman. Oswald did it, and there's obviously a lot of issues that people have with that. Do you guys talk like about the magic bullet thing because it's about how and where that the stuff hits, right? It's like tied into that squib sort of theory, like it's the way that it hits or something. It doesn't.
Yeah, according to the Warren Commission, the bullet hits John Connolly in the back and then somehow switches around and then hits JFK in the head. That's their explanation. But then Paul Landis comes out and says that he's the one that planted the bullet in JFK's stretcher.
Really?
So Paul Landis said that he found a bullet, somehow a complete bullet that hadn't even been fired in the limousine and put it in JFK's stretcher and didn't tell anybody about it until now, until around a year ago. On the 60th anniversary, he came out and said that he was the one that placed the magic bullet, which the magic bullet theory was the theory that that the Warren Commission based everything off of, was that bullet that was found in JFK's stretcher that Paul Landis planted in his stretcher, which is illegal. You don't tamper with evidence. Paul Landis should be prosecuted and should be in prison, but he's like 85 some years old. They're not going to put an 80 some year old person in prison. But that's what he says that happened, and that's what concluded that the Warren Commission did not do any investigation. They didn't talk to the people that supposedly said that they had shrapnel. They didn't talk to the people, the eyewitnesses. They didn't do anything. They didn't follow up on any of it. None of the people.
Wow. There's also, when we're talking about this Warren Commission, the Alan Dulles guy, there's this evidence out there apparently that Alan Dulles and Lyndon B. Johnson were being blackmailed by Mossad to do their narrative, to do what they wanted, and for the nuclear weapons and all that stuff.
Oh, and then get this too. So there was a reenactment done of JFK's assassination by the Secret Service.
Like
Okay.
before or after it happened?
After, this was after it happened. Okay. They did a reenactment and they used the supposed rifle that Oswald used, the exact same rifle in the reenactment. They used his
Wow.
rifle that was in the book depository in the reenactment. A piece of evidence that supposedly shot and killed the president is now being
What
tampered with in a reenactment of
was
the
the
assassination.
reenactment for the Warren Commission, or was it just for shits and giggles? Like, why were they doing the reenactment?
Yes, it was for their investigation. There's actually two of
Right.
them, one by the FBI and one by the Secret Service.
So why did they have to? Yeah, using the actual gun. Well, I know. Look, I know the forensics were weird in those days, and they didn't have the same rules. I'm telling you, my mom in the '70s used to smoke cigarettes, drive without a seatbelt, and put me on her lap in the car, in the front seat. So I'm reminding the young folks that things were a little bit different back in the day. Just saying.
Yeah, but that's like evidence like 101. Like, why would you do that? Why would you use the actual freaking rifle that was supposedly involved in this assassination in a reenactment of it? Like, what are you doing?
Maybe they thought it made it more accurate. I have
Like,
no
you're
idea.
contaminating all of the evidence, and that is their biggest piece of evidence.
Well,
And
apparently
somehow
in
they
your
already knew about
documentary,
it too. They already knew that what kind of rifle was used.
yeah, because
Like,
apparently in your documentary you say that they took like a paraplast or something of um Harvey Oswald's hands, and it showed that he hadn't shot a rifle or something
yes,
like that.
the police did a testing of the a ballistics test, because you can
Right.
do a powder to see
Powder.
if there's any gun residue on your arm, and they point blank said that no rifle residue was found on the body of Oswald.
That's insane.
It was a
So are
paraffin
we
test. That's what it's called, as a paraffin test.
paraffin test, yeah. So are we still? I want to tie this up soon because it's gonna. I don't want to keep you tied up anymore. But are we just back at square one where we don't know, or did this reinforce? Does this reinforce your theories? Well, I mean, you've got the one where he's alive and he didn't die. Some people have the one where Israel did it or the CIA did it. Does this just are we just projecting and using this and reinforcing what we already believe from these documents?
I think so. I think it's one of those things where people can find whatever it is that they want to find within it. It's kind of like the Bible, right? You can find whatever
Mhm.
you want to find in the Bible to relate to your life, or your current situation that you're going through right now. But that doesn't mean that the Bible's wrong. It doesn't mean that these documents are wrong. It's just that you can
Mhm.
find and reinforce
Multiple.
your already preconceived notions of what you thought happened
Mhm.
based off of the documents. So I
Because
essentially think that's where we are.
there's not a smoking gun where someone says, "Yes, I know that such and such did it." There's still obviously people are going to hold to the official narrative that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman that shot from the book depository or whatever it is, and that's that. And we're just shuffling through stuff. There's interesting stuff, but chemtrails doesn't prove anything other than they're planning chemtrails, which we knew anyways.
Yep. Yeah, people have
So
been,
we're all screwed.
but at least he did what he said that he was going to do, right? And that's what I admire
Hmm.
about him. He said that he was going to release the JFK files. He released the JFK files. Now I'm looking forward to the RFK files, and I'm also looking forward to the
Love
Martin
it.
Luther King Jr. files as well, because those
Absolutely.
two aren't as popular as the JFK assassination. So maybe we might get more information in those than we did in the JFK files. So
There's a lot of weird stuff about MLK that they already did release. Like he had some weird, he was not a good holy minister or whatever, a reverend or whatever you want to call him. There was some crazy stuff about him with orgies and drugs and homosexuality. I was like, oh my God. And so the FBI had a lot of dirt on him.
well, MLK, JFK, and RFK were all kind of, they were like in together, like they were doing things together. They were all working
Mhm.
together.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting?
They would organize like parades and stuff to do
And
work
they all
together.
have that, the 3-letter ending with a K. I wonder if that's symbolism. So interesting.
Could be, but I'm definitely looking forward to those files. I think that they're going to come out soon. We just got this dump and Epstein files, of course, before this one, which I applaud Trump for doing as well, just because he never said that he was ever going to release them. Like he was asked about them and he was like,
Mhm.
yeah, they should be released, but he never mentioned that he was 100% going to release them. So that one was kind of like a bonus thing, even though
Mhm.
the client list was redacted. We just got some of the contact list.
Of
But
course.
still, I applaud him for doing
Right.
that, and I applaud him for releasing the JFK files. That means that he's at least sticking to his word. And there isn't another president that I can think of in my lifetime
Mhm.
that does what they say that they're going to do. I can't think of one.
It's true.
I can't think of one president that has
Me neither.
campaigned on something that they said that they were going to do, and then they got into the office and they did it.
It's so easy and direct. They make it look like it's hard to get things done, and it's not. It's because they're corrupt. All right. Well, what do you have anything planned for the future? What's on Ryder Lee's film list next? Do you have something you want to direct, or you're inspiring, or you're working on, or any topics that you are interested in?
Yes, I am going to be working on a few different projects here soon. I'm going to be putting together my own project soon, and I'm really excited about it. I'm in the writing phase of it right now, and hopefully, we'll start filming on it soon within the next couple of months. So I don't want to give
Don't want to
away
spoil it.
exactly what that
Okay.
is until it comes to fruition, but I'm really excited about it.
All right. Well, where can people can find your documentaries on Tubi and Amazon, but is there a place where you have a YouTube channel where they can tune into you?
Yes, I do 2 shows a week, mainly on Monday and Friday on Raised by Giants on YouTube and any and all podcast platforms. And if you would like to follow me on X, it's at Raised by Giants 8 and Instagram at Raised by Giants Pod. Thanks so much for having me on, Melissa. Really appreciate it. And I really hope people watch the documentary if they haven't already seen it. It's been out for a little while now, and I think a lot of people seen it. And I'm just going to go out on a limb saying that a lot of people already seen it. Ian Carroll on Joe Rogan that we just showed the clip of earlier, definitely seen it. And
Yeah.
didn't mention it by name, but I know for a fact he's seen it. And I know for a fact he's seen my other documentary,
He needs to
Clockwork
cred
Shining.
you. He needs to cred you, man. Come on, Ian.
And because the first 30 minutes of that entire conversation is basically the cliff notes of both of mine and Jay Widener's documentaries. So I
Wow.
would appreciate it if, and that could just be a coincidence. Who knows? I don't have that big of an ego to think that he would just do that, but it's just strange that
Interesting.
both the topics that were brought up is the exact same topics of both of my films. But yeah, I hope people watch them, and I hope people watch A Clockwork Shining on Amazon Prime as well. But you can watch JFK, which Clockwork Shining will be on Tubi soon. I think in like a couple of months, it'll also be on
Nice.
Tubi. But please support it on Amazon Prime because that's how
Purchase
we
it.
we get the funds to be able to continue to create more documentaries in the future. So thank you guys very much. Thank you guys that are on her side, and thank you to all my listeners, because I've been simul streaming this bad boy just like we did last time. So thank you all very much.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Well, I'm going to put you off. You don't have to hang around if you don't want. I'm just going to close out. But thank you so much for coming again, Ryder, and you're always welcome on.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, everybody. I hope you found out something new. A lot of this stuff, I didn't know that there was this stuff about him possibly faking his death. So I hope that's new to you, because it certainly was new to me. And I do encourage you to purchase The Clockwork Shining and help support Ryder. That's on Amazon Prime. You can go there and purchase it or rent it, help support Ryder. You can watch, like I said, the JFK-X on Tubi for free, or Amazon, and check it out, because there's a lot more information than we actually got to. But I always found the JFK interesting because it's one of the first major conspiracy theories in America that became really big because it was a president. I mean, there could be some around linking that we don't know of, that no one discusses, but it's one of the first major ones where the word conspiracy theory comes from. It's like the etymology of conspiracy theory. So that's why we always try to cover this and go over it. Now, I am going to be doing a show tomorrow. I'm going to try to get in on the Khazarian Mafia, because I didn't go into detail on this. We have to be really careful. Ryder was streaming it to his channel, and I didn't want him to get a strike or in trouble, but we're going to talk about the Khazarian Mafia, because there's some people that think that the Khazarian Mafia is kind of linked into a lot of this stuff with JFK. And we're going to talk about it. I've got a video that I think I might stream a little bit, and we'll go through some clips, because this guy does a lot better explanation than I ever will, but we'll kind of go into that. Also, might talk about that Trump plans to defund Planned Parenthood. So for those of you that are pro-life, you might think that that's a good thing, but it seems that everything they're defunding, it's not all going to Planned Parenthood. It's not all going to education. It's actually basically like a mafia. We're literally like a giant mafia, and they are pretty much laundering money and stealing money from us. It's absolutely crazy. So join me tomorrow. Please remember to subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Rumble, hit the thumbs up, please. It helps the video. I'm so shadow banned on YouTube. It's just crazy. Follow me on X, because I stream this on X. That's where most of my followers are. You can join me tomorrow. I'm going to be doing some docu-streams and different topics. I also want to do some research on MK Ultra and everybody's favorite psycho clown, John Wayne Gacy. So those are things that I have in the podcast thing. I'm also going to have Jack Danger back on the show. I'm also going to bring a UFO guy, a really good friend of mine and my husband's. His name is Dean Bertram. He's going to come on at the end of April. So we're going to do UFOs and more politics with Jack Danger. So it'll be cool. We got some cool stuff coming. So make sure you go to the website and subscribe. That is genxonx.com. Subscribe to one of those platforms, either Rumble, YouTube, or X, because that's where I stream. And of course, there's the audio podcast that's available on all the audio podcast platforms. But genxonx.com is where you're going to see those links. Guys, I'm going to head out. It has been lovely chatting with you. I have been away. I hadn't streamed for a bit. Like I said, it was a little bit chaotic, but that chaos is coming to an end, and we're starting a new chapter. So please join me for the streams. We're going to try to get in as much shows and info as possible. Take care.